chose to swear his private oath of office on the founder's sacred text. At the time, I thought that the outrage expressed by some toward Congressman Ellison's election and private swearing-in on the Qur'an might have been averted if only more Americans had known their own founding history better, a past that had prepared an eventual place for Congressman Ellison, not in spite of his religion, but because of it. The idea of the Muslim as citizen and federal office holder is not new to the United States. It was first considered in the 18th century. Yet today some claim that even the concept of a Muslim citizen in elected office is threatening to the nation's identity. I argue the opposite in this book. The concept of the American Muslim as citizen is quintessentially evocative of our national ideals. Indeed, the inclusion of Muslims as future citizens in early national political debates demonstrates a decided resistance to the idea of what some would still imagine America to be, a Christian nation. This book about the American past began accidentally for me as a specialist in Islamic history. Initially, I'd wondered why a French play, ostensibly about the Prophet Muhammad, had been performed in Baltimore during the Revolutionary War. To make sense of this more than a decade ago, I had the privilege of attending the Ideal Summer School, Professor Bernard Balin's international seminar on the history of the Atlantic world at Harvard University. I took to paddling in this new Atlantic pond and found that the experience had prompted a sea change in my academic research, which I incorrectly assumed would be temporary. By 2005, at the Atlantic Seminar's 10th anniversary conference, I had found a new document about Muslims in early American political debates. Again, I was fortunate to be invited to present this research to fellow students of Atlantic history. Professor Balin's thoughtful, enthusiastic response to my ideas about Thomas Jefferson and his views of Muslim rights was rooted in his deeper knowledge of these constitutional sources. His interest in these ideas convinced me that what people thought about Muslims as citizens in 1788 should be included in the study of the Constitution. Did more data about Muslims as potential citizens in the founding era exist? Over the next 7 years, I learned the breadth of that affirmative answer. By the time Congressman Ellison was elected and swore his private oath of office on Jefferson's Qur'an in 2007, I thought as a historian that I might have something to contribute beyond the fact of Jefferson's mere ownership of the Islamic sacred text. I wanted to know why Jefferson and others had included Muslims in the nation's nascent ideals. At this juncture, Professor Balin introduced me to Jane Garrett, his kindly, patient editor at Knopf. Thomas Jefferson's Qur'an was born as a book project, with the blessing of an editor who was actually keen on the project. My deep gratitude to Jane endures, despite the sad fact that I failed to finish the final draft before her retirement. My profound thanks go to George Andreu for his insightful editing of the final stage of this manuscript, and to Juhae Kim, his assistant. Many eyes, hands, and brains more agile than my own supported this book's evolution and improvement. I remain humbled that Professor Balin, ever busy, took the time over the last few years to read 2 long, early, and rambling draft chapters about Jefferson, and finally, what I believe to be the last draft of the manuscript. His comments I treasure. Many saved me from obvious idiocies. If any remain, they are my own fault, not his or those of the many colleagues and friends who also sought to help me. Over the years I have been blessed by the insight of many scholars and friends. First among these is Robert M. Haddad, the professor who first inspired my interest in Islamic history as an undergraduate. Since those days long ago, his wisdom and kindness have endured, for which I remain eternally grateful. Unver Eamon, always enthusiastic and energetic, believed in this project from the first. He commented on almost every word of this text, pointing out errors in logic, gaps in argument, and problems with my representation of the Islamic past. Once my gifted graduate student, he took time from his duty